Net neutrality is the principle that Internet service providers must treat all data on the Internet the same, and not discriminate or charge differently by user, content, website, platform, application, type of attached equipment, or method of communication. For instance, under these principles, Internet service providers are unable to intentionally block, slow down or charge money for specific websites and online content. The term was coined by Columbia University media law professor Tim Wu in 2003, as an extension of the long-standing concept of a common carrier, which was used to describe the role of telephone systems. A widely cited example of a violation of net neutrality principles was the Internet service provider Comcast's secret slowing, throttling, of uploads from peer-to-peer file sharing, P2P, applications by using forged packets. Comcast did not stop blocking these protocols, like BitTorrent, until the FCC ordered them to stop. In another minor example, the Madison River Communications Company was fined $15,000 by the FCC, in 2004, for restricting their customers' access to Vonage, which was rivaling their own services. AT&T was also caught limiting access to FaceTime, so only those users who paid for AT&T's new shared data plans could access the application. In July 2017, Verizon Wireless was accused of throttling after users noticed that videos played on Netflix and YouTube were slower than usual, though Verizon commented that it was conducting network testing and that net neutrality rules permit reasonable network management practices. Research suggests that a combination of policy instruments will help realize the range of valued political and economic objectives central to the network neutrality debate. Combined with strong public opinion, this has led some governments to regulate broadband internet services as a public utility, similar to the way electricity, gas, and the water supply are regulated, along with limiting providers and regulating the options those providers can offer. Definition and related principles. Internet neutrality. Network neutrality is the principle that all Internet traffic should be treated equally. Internet traffic includes all of the different messages, files, and data sent over the Internet, including, for example, emails, digital audio files, digital video files, etc. According to Columbia Law School professor Tim Wu, the best way to explain network neutrality is that a public information network will end up being most useful if all content, websites, and platforms, e.g., mobile devices, video game consoles, etc., are treated equally. A more detailed proposed definition of technical and service network neutrality suggests that service network neutrality is the adherence to the paradigm that operation of a service at a certain layer is not influenced by any data other than the data interpreted at that layer, and in accordance with the protocol specification for that layer. Open Internet. Under an open Internet schema, the full resources of the Internet and means to operate on it should be easily accessible to all individuals, companies, and organizations. Applicable concepts include net neutrality, open standards, transparency, lack of Internet censorship, and low barriers to entry. The concept of the open Internet is sometimes expressed as an expectation of decentralized technological power, and is seen by some observers as closely related to open-source software, a type of software program whose maker allows users access to the code that runs the program, so that users can improve the software or fix bugs. Proponents of net neutrality see this as an important component of an open Internet, wherein policies such as equal treatment of data and open web standards allow those using the Internet to easily communicate and conduct business and activities without interference from a third party. In contrast, a closed Internet refers to the opposite situation, wherein established persons, corporations, or governments favor certain uses, restrict access to necessary web standards, artificially degrade some services, or explicitly filter out content. Some countries block certain websites or types of sites, and monitor and/or censor Internet use using Internet police, a specialized type of law enforcement, or secret police. Dumb pipe. The concept of a dumb network, comprising dumb pipes, has been around since at least the early 1990s. The term dumb network refers to a network which is set up but has little or no control or management of the way users make use of the network. The term dumb pipes is analogous to water pipes used in a city water supply system. In theory, these pipes provide a steady supply of water to all users, regardless of the identity of the user or the user's activities with the water. In a dumb network, the endpoints are thought to be where the intelligence lies, and as such, proponents argue that the network should leave the management and operation of communications and data transfer to the end users, not a government bureau or internet company. In 2013, the software company MetroTechNet, Incorporated, MTN, coined the term dumb wave, which is the 2010s era application of the dumb pipe concept to the ubiquitous wireless network. End-to-end principle. The end-to-end principle of network design was first laid out in the 1981 paper End-to-End Arguments in System Design by Jerome H. Saltzer, David P. Reed, and David D. Clark. The principle states that, whenever possible, communications protocol operations should be defined to occur at the endpoints of a communications system, or as close as possible to the resources being controlled. According to the end-to-end principle, protocol features are only justified in the lower layers of a system if they are a performance optimization, hence, TCP retransmission for reliability is still justified, but efforts to improve TCP reliability should stop after peak performance has been reached. They argued that reliable systems tend to require end-to-end processing to operate correctly, in addition to any processing in the intermediate system. They pointed out that most features in the lowest level of a communications system have costs for all higher layer clients, even if those clients do not need the features, and are redundant if the clients have to re-implement the features on an end-to-end basis. This leads to the model of a minimal dumb network with smart terminals, a completely different model from the previous paradigm of the smart network with dumb terminals. Because the end-to-end principle is one of the central design principles of the Internet, and because the practical means for implementing data discrimination violate the end-to-end principle, the principle often enters discussions about net neutrality. The end-to-end principle is closely related, and sometimes seen as a direct precursor to the principle of net neutrality. Traffic shaping. Traffic shaping is the control of computer network traffic to optimize or guarantee performance, improve latency, i.e., decrease internet response times, and / or increase usable bandwidth by delaying packets that meet certain criteria. In practice, traffic shaping is often accomplished by throttling certain types of data, such as streaming video or P2P file sharing. More specifically, traffic shaping is any action on a set of packets, often called a stream or a flow, which imposes additional delay on those packets such that they conform to some predetermined constraint, a contract or traffic profile. Traffic shaping provides a means to control the volume of traffic being sent into a network in a specified period, bandwidth throttling, or the maximum rate at which the traffic is sent, rate limiting, or more complex criteria such as generic cell rate algorithm. Over-provisioning. If the core of a network has more bandwidth than is permitted to enter at the edges, then good quality of service, QoS, can be obtained without policing or throttling. For example, landline telephone network employs admission control to limit user demand on the network core by refusing to create a circuit for the requested connection. During a natural disaster, for example, most users will get a busy signal if they pick up a landline phone, as the phone company prioritizes 9-1-1 and other emergency calls. Overprovisioning is a form of statistical multiplexing that makes liberal estimates of peak user demand. Overprovisioning is used in private networks such as WebEx and the Internet 2 Albanian network, an American university network. David Eisenberg believes that continued overprovisioning will always provide more capacity for less expense than QoS and deep packet inspection technologies. By issue. Discrimination by protocol. Discrimination by protocol is the favoring or blocking information based on aspects of the communications protocol that the computers are using to communicate. In the U.S., a complaint was filed with the Federal Communications Commission against the cable provider, Comcast, alleging they had illegally inhibited users of its high-speed internet service from using popular file-sharing software, BitTorrent. Comcast admitted no wrongdoing in its proposed settlement of up to $16 per share in December 2009. However, a U.S. appeals court ruled in April 2010 that the FCC exceeded its authority when it sanctioned Comcast in 2008 for deliberately preventing some subscribers from using peer-to-peer file sharing services to download large files. However, the FCC spokeswoman Jen Howard responded, "The court in no way disagreed with the importance of preserving a free and open Internet, nor did it close the door to other methods for achieving this important end." Despite the ruling in favor of Comcast, a study by Measurement Lab in October 2011 verified that Comcast had virtually stopped its BitTorrent throttling practices. Discrimination by IP address. During the 1990s, creating a non-neutral Internet was technically infeasible. Originally developed to filter harmful malware, the Internet security company NetScreen Technologies released network firewalls in 2003 with so-called deep packet inspection capabilities. Deep packet inspection helped make real-time discrimination between different kinds of data possible, and is often used for Internet censorship. In a practice called zero rating, companies will reimburse data use from certain addresses, favoring use of those services. Examples include Facebook Zero and Google Free Zone. These zero rating practices are especially common in the developing world. Sometimes Internet service providers, ISPs, will charge some companies, but not others, for the traffic they cause on the ISP's network. French telecom operator Orange, complaining that traffic from YouTube and other Google sites consists of roughly 50% of total traffic on the Orange network, made a deal with Google, in which they charge Google for the traffic incurred on the Orange network. Some also thought that Orange's rival ISP free-throttled YouTube traffic. However, an investigation done by the French telecommunications regulatory body revealed that the network was simply congested during peak hours. Favoring private networks. Proponents of net neutrality argue that without new regulations, Internet service providers would be able to favor their own private protocols over others. ISPs are able to encourage the use of specific services by utilizing private networks to discriminate what data is counted against bandwidth caps. For example, Comcast struck a deal with Microsoft that allowed users to stream television through the Xfinity app on their Xbox 360s without it affecting their bandwidth limit. However, utilizing other television streaming apps, such as Netflix, HBO Go, and Hulu, counted towards the limit. Comcast denied that this infringed on net neutrality principles since it runs its Xfinity for Xbox service on its own, private Internet Protocol network. Peering discrimination. There is some disagreement about whether peering is a net neutrality issue. In the first quarter of 2014, streaming website Netflix reached an arrangement with ISP Comcast to improve the quality of its service to Netflix clients. This arrangement was made in response to increasingly slow connection speeds through Comcast over the course of 2013, where average speeds dropped by over 25% of their values a year before to an all-time low. After the deal was struck in January 2014, the the Netflix Speed Index recorded a 66% increase in connection. Netflix agreed to a similar deal with Verizon in 2014, after Verizon DSL customers' connection speed dropped to less than 1 bit/s early in the year. Netflix spoke out against this deal with a controversial statement delivered to all Verizon customers experiencing low connection speeds, using the Netflix client. This sparked an internal debate between the two companies that led to Verizon's obtaining a cease and desist order on June 5, 2014 that forced Netflix to stop displaying this message. Favoring fast-loading websites. Pro-net neutrality arguments have also noted that regulations are also necessary due to research that has shown low tolerance to slow-loading content providers. In a 2009 research study conducted by Forrester Research, online shoppers expected the web pages they visited to download content instantly. When a page fails to load at the expected speed, many of them simply click out. A study found that even a 1-second delay could lead to 11% fewer page views, a 16% decrease in customer satisfaction, and 7% loss in conversions. Legal aspects. Legal enforcement of net neutrality principles takes a variety of forms, from provisions that outlaw anti-competitive blocking and throttling of Internet services, all the way to legal enforcement that prevents companies from subsidizing Internet use on particular sites. Contrary to popular rhetoric and statements by various individuals involved in the ongoing academic debate, research suggests that a single policy instrument, such as a no-blocking policy or a quality of service tiering policy, cannot achieve the range of valued political and economic objectives central to the debate. As Bauer and Abar suggest, safeguarding multiple goals requires a combination of instruments that will likely involve government and non-government measures. Furthermore, promoting goals such as the freedom of speech, political participation, investment, and innovation calls for complementary policies. By country. Brazil. The Brazilian Civil Rights Framework for the Internet, in Portuguese, Marco Civil da Internet, officially Law No. 12.965, became law on April 23, 2014 at the Global Multi-Stakeholder Meeting on the Future of Internet Governance. It governs the use of the Internet in Brazil, through forecasting principles, guarantees, rights and duties to those who use the network as well as the determination of guidelines for state action. The legislation was used as basis to block the popular WhatsApp application in Brazilian territory, a decision lifted soon afterwards, experts claiming that it was, in actuality, against the framework, which was misinterpreted by the judiciary. Canada. In a January 25, 2011 decision, the Canadian Radio, Television and Telecommunications Commission, CRTC, ruled that usage-based billing could be introduced. Prime Minister Harper signaled that the government may be looking into the ruling. "We're very concerned about CRTC's decision on usage-based billing and its impact on consumers. I've asked for a review of the decision. Some have suggested that the ruling adversely affects net neutrality, since it discriminates against media that is larger in size, such as audio and video." Chile. On June 13, 2010, the National Congress of Chile amended the country's telecommunications law in order to preserve network neutrality, becoming the first country in the world to do so. The law, published on August 26, 2010, added 3 articles to the General Law of Telecommunications, forbidding ISPs from arbitrarily blocking, interfering with, discriminating, hindering or restricting an Internet user's right to use, send, receive, or offer any legal content, application, service or any other type of legal activity or use through the Internet. ISPs must offer Internet access in which content is not arbitrarily treated differently based on its source or ownership. India. On February 8, 2016, the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India, TRAI, banned differential pricing of data services. As per TRAI's press release, the regulator had multiple responses soliciting different opinions with respect to its consultation paper. Considering all the responses, the regulator decided to have an ex-ante regulation instead of a case-by-case tariff investigation regime. According to the TRAI, this decision was reached in order to give the industry participants the much-needed certainty and in view of the high costs of regulation in terms of time and resources that will be required for investigating each case of tariff discrimination. Ruling prohibits any service provider from offering or charging discriminatory tariffs for data services on the basis of content, and also prohibits any agreement or contract which might have effect of discriminatory tariffs for data services or may assist the service provider in any manner to evade the regulation. It also specifies financial disincentives for contravention of regulation. However, the ruling does not prescribe a blanket ban on differential pricing and provides an exception in case of public emergency or for providing emergency services. Discriminatory tariffs are allowed in the case of an emergency. Lastly, according to TRAI, this ruling should not be considered the end of the net neutrality debate. The regulator has promised to keep a close view on the developments in the market and may undertake a review after 2 years or at an earlier date, as it may deem fit. In March 2015, the TRAI released a formal consultation paper on regulatory framework for over-the-top (OTT) services, seeking comments from the public. The consultation paper was criticized for being one-sided and having confusing statements. It was condemned by various politicians and Internet users. By April 24, 2015, over 1 million emails had been sent to TRAI demanding net neutrality. The consultation period ended on January 7, 2016. Violations of net neutrality have been common in India. Examples beyond Facebook's Internet.org include Aircell's Wikipedia Zero along with Aircell's free access to Facebook and WhatsApp, Airtel's free access to Google, and Reliance's free access to Twitter. Facebook's Free Basics program is seen by activists as a net neutrality violation, based on its provision of free-of-cost access to dozens of sites, in collaboration with telecom operators. There were protests online and on ground against the Free Basics program. The Free Software Movement of India also held a protest in Hyderabad and parts of Telangana and Andhra Pradesh. Netherlands. On June 4, 2012, the Netherlands became the first country in Europe and the second in the world, after Chile, to enact a network neutrality law. The main provision of the law requires that providers of public electronic communication networks used to provide Internet access services as well as providers of Internet access services will not hinder or slow down services or applications on the Internet. Russia. After almost 4 years of discussion, in early 2016 Federal Anti-Monopoly Service approved a regulation blocking ISPs from throttling or otherwise blocking any websites apart from those blocked at the request of the Federal Service for Supervision of Communications, Information Technology, and Mass Media, thus protecting net neutrality in Russia. Singapore. In 2014 and 2015, there were efforts to charge over-the-top content, OTT, providers, companies that provide streaming video. InfoComm Development Authority, IDA, has a policy framework for net neutrality that did not allow a surcharge. Consumers also argued that they already pay for their service and that they shouldn't have to pay more to access the sites they want to. Slovenia. At the end of 2012, Slovenia legislated a law of electronic communication implementing a strong principle of net neutrality. Slovenia thus became the second country in Europe to enact a net neutrality law. The Government Agency for Communications, Networks, and Services, AKOS, is enforcing the law and executes inspections. In January 2015 it found zero-rating infringements at the 2 largest mobile network providers, Telecom and Simobile, now A1. In February it found similar infringements also at Amos, now Simobile, and Tumobil, now Telemoc. In July 2016 the Administrative Court of the Republic of Slovenia annulled the decisions of AKOS. South Africa. As of 2016, there is no law on net neutrality in South Africa. A white paper was to be published by the South African government in March 2015, but it has not been published yet. However, the telecommunications regulator ICASA, and the Department of Telecommunications and Postal Services has been engaged in this debate. In March 2014, ICASA invited comments to its Notice of Public Inquiry into the State of Competition in the Information and Communications Technology sector, in which net neutrality was brought up, and comments were invited on the stakeholders' views on enforcement of net neutrality in South Africa. Simultaneously, DTPS was in the process of providing an integrated ICT policy review, to provide recommendations on various issues of ICT policy in South Africa. They published a green paper and invited comments to the same. The green paper did not venture into the debate of net neutrality in detail and simply stated that it is an issue that must be taken into consideration. Following the green paper, a discussion paper was published in November 2014, which also invited comments. Lastly, a final report was published in June 2015 by DTPS providing its policy recommendations. DTPS recommended that the broad tenets of net neutrality be adopted, with principles such as transparency, no blocking of lawful content, and no unreasonable discrimination in mind. They urged the government to set appropriate exceptions to the application of network neutrality principles, such as emergency services, blocking of unlawful content, etc. United Kingdom. In 2007, Plusnet was using deep packet inspection to implement limits and differential charges for peer-to-peer, file transfer protocol, and online game traffic. However, their network management philosophy was made clear for each package they sold, was consistent between different websites. United States. There has been extensive debate about whether net neutrality should be required by law in the United States. Advocates of net neutrality have raised concerns about the ability of broadband providers to use their last-mile infrastructure to block Internet applications and content, e.g. websites, services, and protocols, and even to block out competitors. Opponents claim net neutrality regulations are unnecessary and deter investment into improving broadband infrastructure. Between July 15 and September 15, 2014, the U.S. Federal Communications Commission, FCC, received 3.7 million comments to change the Internet to a telecommunications service, which would allow the FCC to uphold net neutrality. On February 26, 2015, the U.S. Federal Communications Commission, FCC, ruled in favor of net neutrality by reclassifying broadband access as a telecommunications service and thus applying Title II, Common Carrier, of the Communications Act of 1934 as well as Section 706 of the Telecommunications Act of 1996 to Internet service providers. On March 12, 2015, the FCC released the specific details of its new net neutrality rule. And on April 13, 2015, the FCC published the final rule on its new regulations. The rule took effect on June 12, 2015. In 2015, the United States Telecom Association, a trade association representing large telecom companies, filed a lawsuit against the FCC challenging the net neutrality rule. The U.S. telecom industry argued that the FCC reclassifying broadband carriers as common carriers is an overreach on the part of the FCC. The challenge sparked a huge legal battle as cable, telecom, and wireless internet providers sued to overturn regulations that they said went far beyond the FCC's authority and would hurt their businesses. In June 2016, in an 184-page ruling, the United States Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit upheld, by a 2-1 vote, the FCC's net neutrality rules and the FCC's determination that broadband access is a public utility, rather than a luxury. AT&T and the telecom industry said that they would seek to appeal the decision to the Supreme Court. The transition to the Trump administration in January 2017 may have an impact on the future of net neutrality policies in the U.S. Newly appointed FCC Commissioner Ajit Varadarajpai objected to the Open Internet Order, and stated that he planned to modernize FCC policies to match the reality of the modern marketplace, but had not yet decided whether the FCC would attempt to overturn net neutrality policies. On April 29, 2017, a clearer understanding of the latest proposal to compromise net neutrality was described. More specifically, Chairman Pai claims he wants to end the utility-style regulatory approach to the Internet and re-establish the power of market forces in regulating the Internet. Details of his proposal include the reclassification of broadband access as an information service and a decrease in legal regulations on Internet service providers. Pai says the reversal will increase infrastructure investment and innovation among broadband companies. In his proposal, he also suggests redirecting authority from the FCC to the Federal Trade Commission, FTC, to oversee privacy practices. Andrew Schwartzman states, "The Federal Trade Commission is a tiny enforcement agency without any rule-making authority." He continues to say that the FTC are focused on whether a company like Walmart properly protects its customers' privacy information when they have an account on the Internet. Telecom is different. The nature of the info they have is much more significant. Pai advocates ending the broad Internet conduct standard that allows the FCC to intervene if they deem that a broadband provider either acts brutally or is anticipated to do so. Lastly, he pushes for a re-evaluation of whether to maintain, modify, or eliminate the Title II order bright line rules that prevent ISPs from blocking, throttling, or prioritizing certain websites. Critics of FCC Chairman Ajit Pai argue that his plan would create problems that would outweigh the benefits and would threaten open Internet policies. Ed Markey, a Massachusetts Democratic senator, was quoted saying, "We cannot keep the promise of net neutrality, openness and freedom without the rules that ensure it." Advocates for an open Internet state that the current law that Pai intends to dismantle helps maintain the Internet's role in economic growth, innovation, civic empowerment, and free speech. Ajit Pai proposes a potential regulatory framework that is based on reactionary action rather than preemptive action in dealing with legal infractions by ISPs. He thinks that a preemptive regulation will prevent some pro-competition arrangements that businesses could make, whereas reactionary regulation, which will be based upon actual infractions of the law, will provide the best balance of consumer protection and pro-competition. In a 2-1 decision on May 18, the FCC voted to proceed with the motion to scale back the net neutrality protections put in place in 2015 under the Obama administration. The vote is only the beginning of a long process, and now the motion will go through an official period of public feedback on the FCC website before the final decision is made before the end of the year. On November 21, 2017, FCC Chairman Ajit Pai unveiled plans to repeal the net neutrality policy in the United States. EU and net neutrality. Article 3 of EU Regulation 2015/2120 sets the basic framework for ensuring net neutrality across the entire European Union. However, the regulation's text has been criticized as offering loopholes that can undermine the regulation's effectiveness. Some EU member states, such as Slovenia and the Netherlands, have stronger net neutrality laws. Arguments in favor. Proponents of net neutrality regulations include consumer advocates, human rights organizations such as Article 19, online companies and some technology companies. Many major Internet application companies are advocates of neutrality. Yahoo, Vonage, eBay, Amazon, IAC/Interactive Corp., Microsoft, Twitter, Tumblr, ETSE, Daily Kos, Greenpeace, along with many other companies and organizations, have also taken a stance in support of net neutrality. Cogent Communications, an international Internet service provider, has made an announcement in favor of certain net neutrality policies. In 2008, Google published a statement speaking out against letting broadband providers abuse their market power to affect access to competing applications or content. They further equated the situation to that of the telephony market, where telephone companies are not allowed to control who their customers call or what those customers are allowed to say. However, Google's support of net neutrality was called into question in 2014. Several civil rights groups, such as the ACLU, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, Free Press, and Fight for the Future support net neutrality. Individuals who support net neutrality.
Please subscribe and thanks for watching.